What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. Today we got a super fun meme build for y'all for our Arc 3.0 Warlock with the Vesper of Radius Exotic chest piece. I know nobody uses this thing, but I pulled it out of the vault, has a decent roll on it, and we're gonna go over a pretty fun build to use if you're going in some of that easier content, normal strikes, base level nightfalls, gambit, just messing around doing activities, bounties, stuff like that. Definitely not an end game build, but super fun to use. So starting off with our abilities here, we're going to have Storm Transfer, that add clear potential with our healing rifts, which comes into play with how the Vesper of Radius works. Now we're going to have Strafe Glide with the Chain Lightning melee. While amplified, it creates additional chains, and this also jolts enemies when we make contact with a target. We're going to be using Storm Grenades just because I do like them also on Warlocks. Definitely best on Titan, but not too shabby here. We're going to be using Arc Souls as well. Very important when we throw down that Rift. We're going to get that shock from Vesper of Radius, as well as these Arc Souls here. While we're amplified, they are supercharged and increased fire rate. All of those are going to count as ability kills, allowing us to have our Rift back super fast because of our aspect here in Electrostatic Mind. Defeating targets with arc abilities or jolted or blinding targets creates Ionic Traces. This also comes into play, and Ionic Traces makes us amplified, so it's just a nice positive feedback loop with having this and being amplified, the chaining more, and then we just get it back with all of the Electrostatic Mind Ionic Traces because of Arc Souls and the blinding effect, jolting effect that we have going on. Now for Fragments here, we're going to be using Spark of Feedback because we're getting up close and personal with this build, throwing down those rifts, creating that shock and all, not knowing what hit them in those enemies because they haven't seen this chess piece since 2014. Now moving on to our second fragment here, while surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. Again, very important since we're going to be up close and personal with this build. Now we are going to defeat jolting targets, creates Ionic Traces, just another feedback loop for being able to throw down our abilities a lot faster by collecting those Ionic Traces. And finally, while we're amplified, our Arc Special Weapon, Final Blows, create a blinding weapon explosion, which is super nice because we are using the Nezarec Sin Glaive, which is arc, because again we're going to be up close and personal, so all of those defeats with that arc, we're going to get that nice explosion as well, blinding enemies. Now we went spooky with it with the Spider Sparrow, as well as the new shader, the easy breezy beautiful Guardian right there. Now for our weapons, we got the Submission with Subsistence Demo, helping us have that Storm Grenade back a little bit faster, and managing those adds up close and personal with the SMG here. Now the Nezarec Whisper, super nice with Impulse Amplifier and Vorpal Weapon. You're able to basically stand there and block all the damage coming at you from high level enemies with this weapon. Super nice for doing some of that end game content. Not specifically with this build, but it helps a lot being up close and personal with a lot of enemies with this build, throwing down that shock and awe rift. Last but not least, we're using the Thunderlord for that Arc 3.0 synergy. Just loving how it has that Feeding Frenzy and Returning Stroke with that chaining of the lightning, getting back basically like subsistence. Now for our armor pieces over here, we're running that 100 resilience and 100 on our recovery with almost 100 strength. Super nice for that jolting ability in our melee. Now for our helmet here, we're going Glaive Ammo Finder as well as Harmonic Siphon. So we're going to create Orbs of Power with our Glaive as well as with our Thunderlord. And then Elemental Armaments also creating Arc Elemental Wells with our Nezarec Whisper as well as our Thunderlord. Now on our arms, we're going to have Focusing Strike, so grants class ability energy when we damage with our melee attack. So this comes into play with when we throw down that rift, create that shock and awe. We throw out a melee and we basically are getting our rift back instantly, especially with those arc souls creating Ionic Traces like no one's business. Another way that we're going to create arc elemental wells is with elemental ordnance and that storm grenade getting those defeats. Now right here, the Vesper of Radius, the king of the build that we haven't seen, like I said, since 2014, when I don't actually know if this was even out back then, but that was the last time people saw it. Planetary Torrent, so rifts release an arc shockwave when cast. Rift energy recharges faster when we're surrounded by enemies, so we throw down that rift, recreate the shock and awe because enemies definitely not expecting that, and while we're surrounded we have all that resistance going on with our fragments, as well as getting our rift back because of Planetary Torrent, and we can throw out our melee to get it back even faster. Now we're going to throw on Font of Might on this build, so when we pick up those Arc Elemental Wells, our Arc weapons will have increased damage, allowing our Nezarec Whisper as well as our Thunderlord to do more damage with that Glaive Reserves for our Nezarec Whisper, because that's our go-to main weapon with this build, being up close and personal, throwing down that shock and awe rift. Now on our boots right here, we have another stack of Font of Might, which we will be able to stack them because of our class item is Stasis. So we're going to have Elemental Time Dilation, which allows us to stack those mods, but also on our boots reduces our class ability. Every time we pick up an Orb of Power, we're stacking 2 of those, and we are creating Orbs of Power very easily because of Harmonic Siphon with both of these weapons here. Now on our class item, like I said, we're going to be using Elemental Time Dilation, so those Elemental Well mods that grant you time benefits for that extra damage to arc weapons in Font of Might, which we're stacking on our chest piece and boots, allowing us to do more damage for a sustained longer period of time with Nezarec Whisper as well as Thunderlord. Then we're using Amped Up to stay amplified longer, as well as Utility Kickstart, so another way to get back our Rift even faster. When we throw down our Rift and it's fully expended, we gain back ability energy, so super easy way to spam that shock and awe Rift, which enemies definitely not expecting it. As you can see, took it into a Nightfall. Very, very useful for creating those rifts, keeping enemies at bay. And like I said, you just run in there, throw that rift down, create your Arc Souls, create that shock and awe, all of your fragments proc that keep you alive. You get your rift back fast because of all of our mods, as well as the intrinsic trait on the chest piece. Just an absolute banger of a build to have fun with. Nothing too serious about this at all, but it is very, very effective at ad management, especially like I said with those Arc Souls and Warlock. Very good for getting your abilities back and spamming them in your grenade, melee, jolting targets, getting those defeats. Definitely not taking this into a GM, but I might try it for some shiggles later on. But definitely just an average bear build, taking it into, like I said, normal strikes, taking it into gambit, taking it into even a raid, doing ad clear. Not the best for DPS, but definitely can sit there on a plate and do some ad clear with this, or run up to some enemies, do that shock and awe. I know I've said that a lot, but very, very fun, user-friendly build for my Warlocks. Maybe if you're just starting out, Vesper of Radius, one of the first exotics that you have, give it a shot, meme around with it. Very, very fun in my personal opinion. So thank you guys so much for watching again. I truly, truly appreciate it. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.